Hello and welcome to Newsbreak Chats. I'm Chai Hokulenya, the editor of Newsbreak. It's the investigative and in-depth section of Rappler. We're on our fifth episode under quarantine, and fortunately, this is still under more relaxed restrictions. Last Monday, July 27, President Rodrigo Duterte delivered his fifth State of the Nation address, which ran for a little less than 2 hours. A lot has been written and said about it, and we'll just add a little bit more and then try to look ahead. For today, I will be joined by our news editor, Miriam Grace Go. Gigi, hello.
Hello.
And we also have our palace reporter, Pia Ranada. Hi,
Hi.
Pia. And Senate reporter, Aika Ray, but she'll be moving on to another beat. Hi, Aika. And House reporter, Mara Cepeda. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to
Hello.
Newsbreak Chat.
Hi, Miss Chai.
Hi.
Again.
Okay. Kamusta ang quarantine life nyo?
Busy.
Okay, let's jump quickly to our questions. First thing lang, siguro I'm curious about whether there was anything that caught you by surprise when you listened to the president during the SONA, or was it all predictable for you? Mara, would you want to start?
Okay. Oh, for me, I was a little bit surprised that the president did not use the SONA as a means to defend the passage of the anti-terror law in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, but I think that's indicative of him knowing that um, his push for the passage of the anti-terror law, while the public is still grappling with the COVID-19 crisis, is so unpopular that perhaps that's likely why he did not include it in his SONA anymore. I am also disappointed that he did not mention the Marawi rehabilitation. All of a sudden, it's not important. Apparently, it's not important enough for the president. Um, I saw the Deputy Speaker Mujib Hataman actually tweet. He represents the Lone District of Basilan, saying that sana meron ding taning yung Marawi rehabilitation katulad nung taning ni Duterte sa Smart at sa Globe para i-improve
Mm-mm.
yung kanilang services. So, because if Duterte can obsess so much with these oligarchs and give them a deadline to improve their services, bakit hindi yun magawa ni Duterte for the Marawi rehabilitation, which is still pending, hindi pa rin ginagawa, marami pa ring mga bakwit ang hindi nakakabalik sa Marawi. Tapos compounded pa ito na ang bansa ay humaharap sa isang pandemya.
Actually,
Nakaka-disappoint.
Mara, di ba, kasi nga you mentioned yung mga bakwit, no? So I looked a bit at the numbers, and medyo disturbing kasi there are about 25,000 families, 25,000 families yon na displaced. So i-convert mo yon into actual individuals. That translates to about over 125,000 people. And of that number, merong mahigit na 3,000 ang nasa shelters pa rin. So you can imagine how much more difficult it is for them kasi pag nasa shelter ka, 'di ba? Walang access to water, to safe drinking water, tapos dahil cramped yung spaces, medyo mahirap mag-observe ng social distancing or physical distancing. So yes, that is really a big disappointment, not just for the people of Marawi, but several people who have been monitoring Mindanao and yung progress of rehabilitation sa Marawi. Aika, Pia, Gigi, was there anything naman that surprised you?
Ako, I just noted how Duterte, in a way, toned down on his attacks. In the sense that, mas focus na yung kanyang hostility towards oligarchs and the politicians who support, supposedly, these oligarchs. So in the past, we've seen Duterte rant against human rights advocates and the leftists and communists. So that was missing from this SONA, and it was more of he was really focused on the supposed oligarchy that he has now parang promised to focus on for the next 2 years. So it's as if Duterte is also parang zeroing in on his critics, parang deciding who among them is the most powerful and the most worthy of his attention and his hostility. And parang he's arrived at the fact that ito nga. And I think this is also something to do with the 2022 elections, because I feel that of all the critics, of all the forces out there who might do the worst damage to his anointed one being elected, it would be these big businesses who in the past have favored certain candidates over the others or have been very influential in politics. So parang he's sending a message to them na, hey, I'm on to you, and you're not going to be as powerful in the next elections because of me.
Sige, interesting. We'll go back to that point that you raised, Pia. Aika?
During the SONA, actually, I was surprised na the president revived his threats against Globe and Smart. So, isa dun sa mga sinabi niya na parang he will shut down. At first, he was talking about public utilities, taking back the frequencies, the lines, and the telephones, whatsoever. And then, bigla siyang napunta dun sa he will shut down Globe and Smart. And this is actually kind of, parang interesting and somehow scary kasi kung titignan mo yung bigger picture, the president actually shut down ABS-CBN, which is a source of information. And ano pa ba yung natitira na perhaps parang kung saan pwedeng mag-express ng dissent yung mga tao? The internet. So yun yung isa sa mga parang nagulat ako in a way, but also parang ine-expect mo na rin na aatakihin niya yung part na yun. Yeah.
Okay. Gigi?
Ako, not surprised na hindi niya binanggit, but disappointed na hindi niya binanggit. One is yung, as we were all expecting sana, wanted, no? Yung, we wanted a clear strategy that will equip specific sectors as we navigate the pandemic, the time of the pandemic. Although the president proposed certain measures that would address the pandemic, hindi immediate mag-a-address ng concerns. These are parang bills, legislation that will take time bago ma-deliberate, mapondohan, saka ma-implement. Another disappointing na hindi nasabi is he didn't lay out a plan for this other crisis that this pandemic spurred, which is the unpreparedness of the educational system for the sudden shift to distance learning in terms of cost, training ng teachers, yung pag-design ng curricula. Blind lahat yung mga schools, yung teachers, yung parents, yung students, yung stakeholders, and yet not a word about it.
I remember last month, parang nung pinag-usapan natin yung pandemic, this is already a point that was raised then. And a month later, ganun pa rin, parang walang masyadong nagbago, di ba? I'm curious though, kasi today, recently, parang there were recent pronouncements from the palace, Pia. Ano ba yung recent, was it Roque who said, okay, government has a plan and ito yung bago sa yung fight against the COVID-19. And then also I know that si Vice President Leni Robredo also had her own suggestions or recommendations kung paano lalabanan to. So let's just jump very quickly to the pandemic. What's the latest, Pia?
So the latest was yesterday, the IATF-EIB met and they were discussing recommendations to the president. And apart from recommending new quarantine classifications for August, napag-usapan rin yung how to address the rise in infections the past few weeks. So actually, the suggestions given and collated yesterday are not exactly new in the sense that they were only formulated yesterday, but parang they were plans that were already discussed the days before. Pero ngayon lang nila parang binabunch up to call a plan. So yung plan is for components, and one of them is massive testing through pool testing. So they're saying that now we can test up to 10 times more than we used to because of this concept of pool testing, where 10 to 20 samples from 10 to 20 people can be processed at the same time instead of parang one test kit per person. So right now we don't really know how that will work because the pilot testing just finished and they're going to try to pilot it again. So that is still parang, it's a plan, but diba, we don't really know how effective it will be. But the second part of it is also ramping up contact tracing to up to the third degree. And that's a very big promise because experts had said before that for Vietnam, yun yung naging effective. They were able to trace up to the third level of contacts of a confirmed case. And then the third aspect of that is to expand the critical care capacity for COVID-19 beds. So in Metro Manila kasi nag-near danger zone na yung capacity natin. It's already, I think, 80% to 89% for the isolation and ward beds. So that's the danger zone. So what they're saying now is instead of just 30% capacity for hospitals, ngayon dapat public hospitals should allot 50%, half of their beds to COVID-19. And then the fourth one would be requiring mild and asymptomatic cases to stay in state-run facilities. Kasi before, inamin naman ni Roque na hindi naging malinaw yung DOH in explaining that if you are mild and asymptomatic and you don't have your own room and bathroom, you can't stay at home. So all this time, the different LGUs have been interpreting the rules differently. So some people would send those patients home even if they didn't have their own rooms and bathrooms. Some naman would send them to isolation facilities. So now parang standardized na if you don't have a room, you'll get sent to these state-run quarantine centers. So yun yung 4-point plan which they will present to the president, and Duterte will have to approve it in the coming days. I think tomorrow he will be meeting with them.
Okay, it's good to hear about these things na finally parang may nag-iisip and putting things together. But we sort of wish na sana ginawa nyo to months back pa, di ba? Hindi yung umabot na tayo sa over 80,000, 82,000 cases and then ngayon lang naiisip na, okay, let's do these things finally. Sana early on pa when the numbers were lower. But anyway, sige. Mara, what has the Vice President been saying naman?
Okay, so today, just a couple of hours ago, the Vice President went live. She didn't go live. She posted a video on Facebook where, in under 22 minutes, she was able to identify key parts, key lapses of the Duterte government's response to the pandemic, and she was able to give her suggestions to that. And I think what's very striking to me is the Vice President's appreciation for data, which is something that our president doesn't really have. Sabi doon ni Vice President Leni Robredo na kapag naayos ng Duterte administration yung proseso ng pagkuha ng data ng DOH ng mga COVID-19 cases, then that will lay out a foundation on how the rest of the plan and the rest of the response will go. And she also told the president that you cannot just wait for a vaccine to be, because it seems the president during his SONA, he said that he pleaded with Chinese President Xi Jinping to prioritize the Philippines once China develops its own COVID-19 vaccine. So Duterte seems to have this idea that the vaccine will be improved anytime soon. Na bahala na si Batman. And if you think about it, yung plano ng Duterte administration that PL laid out, hindi yan sinama ni Duterte sa SONA niya. Ibig sabihin, hindi yan klaro until all the criticisms came in during the SONA. And the Vice President was able also to give a concrete and comprehensive suggestion. She also endorsed some of the bills that Duterte endorsed nung kanyang SONA, including yung CREATE bill, which is the second tax reform package. But this wasn't a bill that was crafted as a response to the pandemic. Si Vice President Leni, she also endorsed or is lobbying for the passage of the Arise bill, which is the 1.3 trillion economic stimulus package being proposed by the House. Actually, pinasa na yun nung lower chamber.
Mentioned, no? Yeah, I'm curious though, Mara.
Yes.
Was there anything that she mentioned which has not been covered by or emphasized by the Duterte administration? Meron bang unique sa kanya or essentially nandun na rin pero hindi lang nabibigyan ng emphasis or priority?
One thing also that's quite unique with the Vice President is she said that it's important that we don't just appoint czars, lead certain aspects of the pandemic response. Because recently, that's what the Duterte government did. Nag-appoint sila ng mga bagong czars. The vice president said, kailangan mas public health experts yung pinibigyan ng puwang para mag-lead ng response para tama din yung magiging hakbang nung government.
Okay, thank you. Okay, speaking of SARS, nabanggit naman din ito ni Tia kanina. I think there was openly, no? Parang clearly, parang yung medyo pinag-initan ni Duterte, and this has been a focus of his, is an oligarch. And as was pointed out nga, parang opening pa lang, binanggit na ang ABS, binanggit na ang Lopez's, and binanggit na si Frank Drilon. Do you think tunay ba to, or do you suspect that you hit the Ayalas and you hit MVP of the Aditi Smart, pero meron namang baka ibang makinabang, and as Pia mentioned kanina, baka link kaya rin ito sa 2022, or is that purely speculative? Aika.
Yung kay Drilon kasi, kay Senator Drilon, gusto niyang, meron siyang bill about anti-political dynasty bill. And yung reaction ni President at that time was rooted in an interview where he said na he's willing to help the president na to end oligarchy. But of course, the system persists because meron ding mga political dynasty. So, some sort of patronage system. So yun yung bigger picture ng pag-atake ni President Duterte. I think he was kind of in a way hurt dahil sa sinabi nga ni Senator Drilon na even naman sila President Duterte sa political dynasty.
Kaya di ba totoo yun?
Yun na nga, exactly. So parang simula pa lang ng SONA, si Senator Drilon kaagad yung kanyang inattack. So parang yung question din, I think itong sentiments kasi ni Senator Drilon is true, di ba? I mean, the system persists. Merong mga businesses, oligarchs na sinasabi nga nila na nagbe-benefit because of the political dynasty system. So ayun, parang I think dun natamaan talaga dun si President.
Okay, Gigi, what's your take?
What's my take? I think it was a poorly written speech because you opened and closed with Drilon. I mean, parang in the scheme of things, kung gusto mo to send your message across strongly, sana hindi ka nag-focus sa isang tao na parang meron ka lang personal na pagganti sa kanya or personal beef sa kanya. But sana nag-focus ka doon sa whether sincere or hindi yung sinasabi mong pag-dismantle ng oligarchs. Sana nag-focus ka doon sa messaging na yon. I think also it's a combination of purposes why the president is doing this. One, it's really favoring the businessmen na nakakampi niya. At the same time, it's sending a warning for businessmen who will not toe the line, and it's a message also na meron akong certain favored candidates for the 2022 elections. Parang it's really dapat you should know nasaan kayo naka-position. We have to remember that the main beef of the president against the Lopez's was the supposed bias during the 2016 elections. So I think yung pagtingin niya sa lahat sa power ng oligarchs ay yung really the power to install elective officials. So I think mas andun nang gagaling yung bakit niya din tinitira yung ibang big businesses. And at the same time, meron siyang pogi points because right now ang tinitira niya is supposedly the mga gut issues ng consumers kung supposedly pangit yung serbisyo ng internet, ng mga mobile signal sa kayong mga kuryente sa katubig. If he'll be able to navigate this correctly, baka makalimutan ng tao, ng mga botante, ng masa, yung iba niyang kasalanan. Kasi these are gut issues.
And nandun na naman yung usual deadline, di ba? I give you until December to fix this. Otherwise, ganito, meron siyang, may consequences. I just like to jump again to yung legislation naman, no? Because he also mentioned this. And I think merong mga 21 na nilist na priority or ito yung mga gusto niya pero 5 lang yata doon ang may kinalaman sa pandemic. Ano yung prospects ng yung death penalty by lethal injection? Is that something that will fly in the current Congress? Aika or Mara?
On the part of the House, I think that they will still probably they're going to be having a hard time like they did in 2017, but the House will likely still pass it because the House Committee on kasi the former authors, the authors of the death penalty bills, they're already backing it again. And no less than House Majority Leader Martin Romualdez, who by virtue of his position is expected to whip the votes, already promised thorough debates on the death penalty. Magkakatalo sa Senado because alam natin na in 2017 kaya hindi pumasa yung death penalty bill kahit for drug convicts dahil ayaw ng Senado. And Senate President Soto said there are better chances now for the death penalty bill, but only if it will be about drugs. So, hindi pwedeng isama dyan yung rape, yung plunder, all these other issues. It's going to be harder to negotiate and do horse trading with the other congressmen. And this only means that our lawmakers are going to be distracted. Because, even if the Constitution meant for Congress to act as checks and balances for the president, in the Philippines, they deliver the president's legislative agenda. And hindi naman nawala sa lawmakers na malakas pa rin yung push to Duterte for the death penalty. I mean, nung hindi sila pumalakpak, parang na-shock ata sila nung minention ni Duterte yung death penalty again. Pilit siya na hindi malakas yung palapak, maybe they don't like it. Palakpak naman ng mga congressman at mga senador. So the president was very impassioned when he talked about fighting the oligarchs. So yes, both chambers will still pass the stimulus packages. Anyway, kasi for example, yung Arise, pasado na sa House. Yung FIST Act, which will help banks manage their non-performing assets affected by the pandemic, pasado na sa House, hinihintay na lang na may mag-file sa Senate. Yung Bayanihan 2 bill, napasa na sa Senate, sa House Committee level, ipapasa na rin yan maybe next week or in 2 weeks. So, we can expect those to happen kasi yun din naman ang promise ni Senate President Vicente Soto III and ni Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano. But because we want to get on the good side of the president and the elections is in 2 years, the campaign season will begin next year, they will have to do the populist policies that Duterte wants to happen. So in the coming weeks, we will see Congress passing COVID-19 related bills on the one hand, and then at least in the House, they will continue with their probes into the services of public utilities. But we all know that they are gonna go after the businessmen behind this. For example, case in point, the Lopezes. Yung ongoing Meralco probe ngayon, they're questioning how Meralco is computing our electricity rates. And lahat tayo galit pag mataas yung electricity bill natin tapos hindi naman ganun yung konsumo natin. And they want to look into the contract of Meralco to with one of its power contributors, yung First Gen Corporation. And who owns it? The Lopez family. So nakikita na natin yung projection. And then
Ipitin talaga ang Lopezes, no?
Yes, and actually
you can sense it, yes.
Yes, and just yesterday, the lawmakers who accused ABS-CBN during the franchise hearings filed 4 resolutions calling for more probes into the Lopezes. So there's one. Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta wants to hold the probe if the Lopezes actually still own ABS-CBN's
Yeah.
property in Quezon City after the Marcos sequestration of the network no martial law. Um, Deputy Speaker Paulo Duterte, the son of the president, and several other allies of the president, also want to look into the 1.6 billion peso loan na kinundo
Mhm.
ng Development Bank to the Philippines sa Lopez family. They're claiming that the family unjustly benefited from it, from this condonation of the loan to the detriment of the Filipino people. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Boying Remulla also wants to hold a separate investigation into Amcara Broadcasting Network, which he
Yeah.
accused of being a dummy of ABS-CBN because it turns out yung equipment nila at ang tanging kliyente lang, ang tanging mga shows na ini-air nila ay ABS-CBN lang pala. And then there's
And yet, di ba, napaka-unusual lang that after you see these things, itong aggression against the Lopezes, and yet the Lopezes willingly offer their facilities for online learning, no? So parang, okay, and I think one of the media critics, si Verhel had pointed out his clear disappointment with this. So obviously, so much is at stake for the Lopezes. Aika, I'm curious though, kasi nga sinabi ni Mara, this is a situation in the House. Ano naman yung situation in the Senate? Magsa-soften nga ba talaga as far as the death penalty is concerned?
I can
Okay,
answer
parang,
siguro for the
yes,
Senate because
sige,
I
Gigi,
audited
thank you.
Jay's story. Ang sinabi ni Senate President Soto, there's a likelihood na ipasa ng Senate yung death penalty bill if the death penalty will be limited to big time drug lords talaga. Because that sabi ni Soto, because kapag ganon, hindi sila maa-accuse ng critics na this will be anti-poor kasi wala namang drug lord na poor. So, and pag very specific daw yung target na i-impose ng death penalty, and lahat naman tayo talaga, galit tayo dun sa problema ng drugs, and we've always been saying na dapat big fish ang tinitira ng pamahalaan. So, kung ipo-focus mo doon yung proposal na death penalty, baka hindi ganun kalakas yung backlash at maipasa ng Senado. So,
kasi okay, parang ang nakikita ko nga is parang very populist pa rin, no? Yung track, yung tinatahak na path. Drugs nandyan pa rin. Anti-terror medyo kumambyo ng konti. Hindi binigyan ng ganong kalaking emphasis during the SONA. Meralco, internet, very very popular issues with ordinary people, lalo na ngayon na mag-aaral online. Kung masama ang internet connection mo, magagalit ka talaga sa Globe and Smart and whatever, no? Pero meron pa rin fear, lalo na with the anti-terror law, na palayo tayo sa demokrasya. And is this a fear that parang nararamdaman nyo rin ba? And do you see that it will become increasingly worse as we end the year and move on to an election year?
I guess the
What do you
frightening
think?
thing, with what Duterte is doing is parang he's making it appear like we can only function as a nation if we punish each other. Parang yun yung nagiging strategy niya, like not happy with Globe and Smart, threaten to shut them down. Parang we don't like criminals, let's kill them all. Parang it's very heavy-handed, and yung messaging that we get is we can't get anything done unless someone else suffers. And for me, ito yung very dangerous yung idea na yun because it takes advantage of our real concern and grievances about these services. Obviously, lahat tayo dismayed when a drug addict kills someone, or when Globe and Smart don't give us the service we deserve. But at the same time, parang he's using our grievances to railroad, or to for us to forget the fact that by punishing these people, we also sacrifice due process, which is very basic in any democracy. So parang medyo sneaky way siya of robbing us of our freedoms, because parang he's putting it as a choice to us, eh. Either you retain the freedoms in a democratic society, or you have to make do with the bad service of Smart and Globe. You have to make do with these drug addicts roaming the streets. So false choice siya, and we're just not realizing that he's backing us up in a corner, and we're being forced to make a choice that we'll definitely regret in the future, because yung due process, diba, even if right now hindi tayo affected by, like, let's say, a drug addict getting killed in the streets by vigilantes, we may not be related to that person, we may not be that person, but the due process that protects that person is the same due process that protects every one of us from other abuses. So yun lang yung scary thing that is being normalized under this administration. Parang we're forgetting that that there are many ways to deal with the problem without resorting to killing someone or shutting someone down. There are more sophisticated, more humane ways of dealing with problems. And these shortcuts just won't cut it, despite his messaging.
Yeah, that's the right that's the right description. Shortcut talaga. Kung gusto nyo ng solusyon, kasi ang tagal-tagal nito yung problemang to, this is the fastest way to do it. And we'll deal with it, we'll kill them, we'll arrest all of them. And in fact, when I checked now with Rambo kanina, insofar as arrests are concerned, no? So for example, in relation pa lang dun sa quarantine violations, there have been 77,000 who have been arrested. And then, syempre, karamihan yan nasa Luzon, 46,000, followed by the Visayas, over 17,000, and then Mindanao, 12,000. Quarantine violations lang yan. And parang, I guess some people would say, buti nga, kasi nag-violate kayo ng quarantine, eh. So, hindi kayo sumusunod sa batas, and you're putting everyone's health in danger. So, yung sinabi mo nga, Pia, about false choices and the rule of law na nawawala because this is for the good of everyone. Yun yung mahusay na packaging and messaging na nagagawa nila. How about you, Gigi? What is your observation or your criticism here?
Specifically about which
Itong yung trend nga towards nawawala na yung the rule of law and yung authoritarianism, we're veering away from democratic ways.
I think naging very convenient excuse sa kanila yung lockdown, yung restrictions ng pandemic, kasi as you said, there would be a part of the population that would say, sige lang hulihin yung mga quote-unquote pasaway. Nabablur yung line between hinuli ka ba kasi nagpo-protesta ka, or hinuli ka kasi lumabag ka sa safety protocols. And ulitin mo yon, araw-arawin mo, and it's very tiring for advocates. Para halimbawa may hinuli na madami, hindi ganun kadami yung human rights lawyers mo na sasaklolo at magbabantay ng kaso. And then, I think ang strategy is papagurin mo lang yung tao, eh. Hindi lahat ng tao matapang. Parang there has to be leaders from certain sectors ng society para mag-sustain, mag-strategize, mag-coordinate, mag-sustain ng pagiging vigilant sa paano pinapatakbo yung ating pamahalaan, yung ating lipunan. And mas marami at endless yung resources ng state kung mag-aabuso sila. So parang araw-araw na magsasalpukan kayo, and parang matira yung matibay, matira yung merong resources. So yun lang. And it's been made easier for state forces na dahil naka-lockdown yung mga tao. Mm-hmm. So, yun, parang you want information from the government, hindi ka makakuha kasi naka-lockdown, eh. Parang you want to join the protest, hindi ka makakasama physically kasi natatakot ka sa virus eh. Yung mga ganun na pupunta ka lang sa UP campus where protests are allowed, huhulihin ka kasi supposedly tumawid ka from one province to another. So pinaghahalo nila, sinasamantala nila yung yung quarantine, yung mga limitations natin during the lockdown. And I think they couldn't have found a perfect or a better time para isabay yung mga ganitong pagsikil sa ating rights.
Mhm. Although, sa UP, no, parang merong mga, yun na nga, meron pa rin mga naaresto. And I think people were really watching, monitoring kung ilan ang pupunta sa UP, ilan ang magrarally, ilan ang mag-express ng galit, no. I curious lang ako whether this is something that you see if can be sustained over a long period of time, or bugso lang ba ito ng damdamin na kung 1 year or 2 years from now, mawawala rin?
Actually, I think nag-agree ako din sa sinabi ni Miss Gigi kanina na the administration took advantage of the quarantine, the coronavirus situation, and this experience of being locked up in your house, in your condo, with your family, or sometimes you're alone. And ito yung parang ano siya experience na tumatatak sa tao. And it's very interesting na we're seeing, I think they've mentioned it already, that we're seeing social movements being created online, and meron pa nga yung rally na tinatawag nilang leaderless rally. Merong nagkakaroon ng group sa Facebook, sa Twitter, sa Telegram, kung saan lumalabas yung mga information. I was actually surprised that this certain group, which was specifically made about the anti-terrorism bill when it was still a bill. And hanggang ngayon, dire-diretso pa rin yung movement doon, no? Meron ding, yung sa mga Facebook groups, merong isang group, yung tawag dito is yung quarantine tributes na group. And it first started as parang ano yung mga tips ng mga tao now that you're in quarantine, what will you do outside, how will you conduct yourselves when you're around with other people. But this group has actually turned into something na where the youth who are not very informed about particular topics, political topics, or the anti-terrorism bill, or the death penalty, na tinagtatanong talaga sila. Na sinasabi nila, hindi ko alam kung anong, bakit nagagalit yung mga tao dahil sa particular na issue na ito. And itong page na to, very healthy yung discussion, and talagang makikita mo na merong mga natututo na mga kabataan na dating hindi naman sila maalam or wala silang pakialam dahil meron silang ibang bagay na pinagkakaabalahan. So, I think, in a way, parang naging opportunity din itong pandemic na to for a lot of people to see na authoritarian yung government mo. And kung ang question is, ano yung, kung hanggang kailan ba ito, makikita natin din sa mga groups na ito na talagang yung mga tao, sinasabi nila na they will do something about it now, they will speak out and make it manifest come 2022.
Actually, interesting yung point mo, no? Kasi if you think about it, the pandemic has also brought out a lot of, parang it forces you to think Parang tatanggapin mo ba to? Katanggap-tanggap ba ito? So, in the end, parang okay lang ba ang isang authoritarian government for you? Okay lang ba ang isang presidente na may ganyang tendencies kasi naaayos ng mabilisan ng problema? So, I guess it forces us also to think, ano ba yung basic values natin as a people? Ano yung prinsipyo mo? Ano yung standards mo of leadership? So siguro I'd like to end lang very quickly. Hindi ko na po napanood nyo yung Danish drama series na Borgen. It's about this female prime minister, politician. Sa Denmark, napaka-tibay ng mga political parties, unlike unlike here in the Philippines. Tapos bawat episode, meron silang parang quotation from various leaders, past presidents, or basta iba-ibang tao. And then yung last episode, ang kinote nila doon, si Abraham Lincoln. Ang sabi niya, if you want to test a man's character, give him power. So, I just wanted to ask you, no, and I'm not limiting this to the president, but different leaders, no, people who you've covered in different government agencies. Ano yung nakikita ninyong naging epekto ng power sa kanila when nung niluklok sila either in the House, in the Senate, in Malacanang, or in local government? Do we have good leaders who are able to use power wisely?
In the person of the vice president during this pandemic alone, I think she has shown that she is a good leader. In terms of power nga, the office of the vice president doesn't have a lot of funds. It doesn't really have, it's not really empowered to or mandated to do this certain service to a specific sector. But the vice president, since the pandemic began, decided we don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of connections. We have a network with different sectors. We have a network with different private companies, with NGOs. Let's use that. And ever since yung direction ng OVP is to help frontliners at very comprehensive, from giving them PPEs to giving them free dormitories. And the vice president is doing this without any accusations of misuse of funds. Very transparent. They're raising donations from the people, from different companies. At ina-announce nila lagi kung saan napupunta down to the last centavo. In covering the House, I have learned that we elect a lot of brilliant, kung talino lang, a lot of brilliant men and women in Batasan and in the Senate. But sometimes when you give them power, they will do anything to ensure that that power will stay with them for the next 3 elections. And that would mean kissing ass of whoever is in Malacanang. Some of them will do this proudly. They will find a way to bend the law to justify what the president wants to happen. They will turn a blind eye on abuses. Many of them will justify it. But I think that the fact that there are still good leaders, we are hoping that mababago yung situation. But at least in the House, a lot of them want to stay in power for at least 3 terms, and we're going to expect them to always give in to the whims of the president.
I'll add dun sa sinabi ni Mara na it's true talaga na at least in the Senate, there are a lot of brilliant senators and those who actually care about their constituents. Kasi syempre, galing din naman sila sa iba't ibang localities, no? But sometimes, ang pinaka napapapansin mo talaga na the senators are able to speak out about some key parts or key issues na related to the administration because they are elected at a national level. So, kaya nilang magsalita ng ganun. But those who are actually yung mga ibang incumbent na tingin nila hindi sasalita. In the Senate, gusto talaga makikita natin din yun sa mga bills that they wanted to push. Like, say, for example, the Bayanihan 2 bill, which actually took so much time for them to pass because they're waiting for the certification of the president na hindi naman dumating. And merong limits. At sinasabi nga nila na if only the economic them to give more budget, more authority na pwede nilang i-legislate, they would increase yung standby fund na we can use for the coronavirus response. But wala tied yung hands.
Yeah, in our response to the pandemic, I think klaro naman sa atin lahat that in the last 4.5 months, parang yung national government was sort of like winging this as we go along, and then parang headless chicken talaga. And the direct response and effective response has always been coming from the local government units. And then dun dun natin din sa local makikita yung danger ng sinasabi mo, China. If you want to see a man's character, give him power. Kasi mula sa barangay captain hanggang sa mga pulis at mayors, kapag hindi talaga nakakaintindi ng governance, walang common sense, or hindi naiintindihan yung laki ng problema, tapos merong malaking pera na available, dun mo makikita lahat ng abuso. So it also tells you na kung ang leader mo na maayos sa local, ang pinili mo, more likely magsusurvive ka or maaalalayan ka during times of crisis like this. Kasi kung may abusante na barangay captain at matino ang mayor mo, magdadalawang isip sa barangay captain. Kung may abusante na pulis sa checkpoint mo, hindi sila pwedeng mangganon kasi kung mahigpit yung mayor mo or yung governor mo. So yun, it boils down to saan mo nire-rest, tells a lot about us as voters, no? Saan mo ni-rest yung tiwala mo para patakbuhin yung affairs ng community. Para pagdating ng crisis na ganito, sigurado kang protektado yung rights mo, nabibigay sa iyo yung serbisyo at hindi ka pagtitripan or magiging victims lang ng mga taong maliliit na nabigyan ng power at umubuso.
Pia?
In my case, kasi kino-cover ko si Duterte, so unfortunately for Filipinos, na-elect si Duterte precisely because he ran on a promise to use his powers to the hilt. So si Duterte, parang elected siya, not because he will be restraining himself, but precisely because he will do whatever it takes, supposedly, for his will to be done. So, when I was writing the SONA Advancer story, gumawa ko ng parang every year, ano ba yung nagawa ni Duterte using his powers? And talagang you can see from 2016 to 2019, even till this year, parang may escalation of powers that we saw. Like, in 2016, it began with sending De Lima to jail, diba? Just by accusing her of immorality. Tapos napatalsik nila yung isang Supreme Court justice. So parang each year, it just gets, parang he's able to do bigger and bigger things. And finally, this year, diba, he shut down the most powerful TV network in the country. So we will see next year where that power will take him.
Okay. Thank you very much. Siguro on that note, we'll end the discussion. Hopefully next year, the next SONA, that will be the last SONA of the president. There would be better things that we would hear, and we look forward to new leaders, younger leaders, who will hopefully bring the country out of this rut, out of this pandemic. And sana merong rule of law, because Filipinos really deserve better, and we really should not settle for kung sino-sino lang, di ba? So thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully by next month we're out of quarantine, but I have very serious doubts. But thank you. I'm Shai Helenia. This is Newsbreak Chat.